Gaza's health ministry reports critical shortages of medicines, including depleted cancer treatments. The Syrian foreign minister asserts commitment to balanced, cooperative, regional and international relations for peace. And Israel withdraws from Naqoura, transferring control to the Lebanese army overseen internationally. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. I'm Henny Saif and we begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Gaza's health ministry has warned of a severe shortage of medicines and medical supplies. It added that stocks of 120 medicines, including 20 cancer treatments, are completely depleted in the ministry's warehouses. Israeli Army radio has announced that the Qnews Brigade has withdrawn from the Gaza Strip after 2 consecutive months of fighting in its northern region. The radio station reported that the departure of the Qnews Brigade does not necessarily indicate a reduction in the number of active forces, noting that the brigade had lost 13 soldiers in northern Gaza over the past 2 months. Wafa news agency has reported that the occupation army arrested at least 20 Palestinians, including children and former prisoners, in the West Bank over the past 24 hours. It added that the arrests took place across several occupied West Bank governorates, including Hebron, Bethlehem, Tulkarem, Jericho, Ramallah and Jerusalem. Health authorities in Gaza have reported that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has surpassed 45,800, with more than 109,000 people injured. The latest figures follow reports of Israeli occupation forces killing 88 Palestinians and injuring 208 others in the Gaza Strip over the past 24 hours. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has criticized Israel's justification for striking Kamal Adwan Hospital in Gaza, describing it as vague and unsupported by evidence. Israel claimed credible intelligence linked the hospital to Hamas activities, but provided insufficient proof. Turk emphasized the need for an independent investigation into attacks on Gaza's hospitals, healthcare facilities and infrastructure. This comes as the United Nations Security Council has convened to discuss the Israel-Palestine conflict. Palestinian media has reported that Israeli drone strikes injured several people in northwest Gaza City. Meanwhile, in southern Gaza City, Israeli artillery bombed the outskirts of the Sabra neighborhood, according to Palestinian sources. The Palestinian news agency has reported that a Palestinian was killed early this morning in an Israeli drone strike on the Shabura area of Rafah refugee camp in southern Gaza. The agency added that the attack occurred at dawn and the victim's identity has not yet been released. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati has spoken with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken about Gaza and Syria. Abdulati called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, unimpeded humanitarian aid, and an end to Israel's targeting of healthcare infrastructure. Regarding Syria, Abdulati emphasized Egypt's support for a nationally owned, inclusive political transition. Blinken praised Egypt's vital role in regional stability during their discussion. For the third day in a row, the Gaza Strip faces relentless Israeli bombardment, escalating violence and worsening humanitarian conditions.
The Gaza Strip remains under relentless Israeli military assault, marking 3 days of intense bombardments. Since October 7, 2023, the Palestinian Ministry of Health reports over 45,700 deaths, with a significant number of women and children among the casualties. In the past 24 hours, Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 80 Palestinians, raising Gaza's death toll to 45,805. Israeli occupation forces claim to have conducted over 100 airstrikes targeting what they describe as terror sites, asserting that Hamas operatives were among those eliminated. However, these operations have inflicted severe civilian casualties and caused widespread destruction. The Palestinian Ministry of Endowments highlights the destruction of over 800 mosques and 3 churches, exacerbating Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Ceasefire negotiations, mediated by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States, aim to end the 15-month-long conflict. The urgency of these talks has intensified following the release of a video by Hamas showing an Israeli detainee, increasing pressure for detainee negotiations. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces detained over 20 Palestinians, including children, and fatally shot a man during a raid near Nablus, adding to regional tensions. The international community expresses growing concern, calling for an immediate ceasefire to protect civilian lives. Humanitarian organizations warn of a worsening crisis as destroyed infrastructure, including places of worship and hospitals, severely hampers access to essential services.
The Biden administration has approved $8 billion arms sale to Israel. According to Axios' website, the proposed deal, which requires approval from both the House of Representatives and Senate committees, includes munitions for fighter jets and attack helicopters, artillery shells, small-diameter bombs, and warheads. In August, the Biden administration approved over $20 billion in new weapons sales to Israel, which included 50 F-15 fighter jets, 33,000 tank cartridges, and 50,000 explosive mortar cartridges. Physicians for Human Rights Israel, the PHRI, have stated that the destruction of the health system in northern Gaza will be complete if Israel is allowed to evacuate the last 2 remaining operational medical centers. In a statement on social media, the group said that if the Indonesian hospital and Al-Auda hospital are forced to close by Israel's military, there will be no medical centers left in northern Gaza. The organization also called on all international actors to intervene immediately and halt Israel's ethnic cleansing in northern Gaza. UNRWA has urged Israel to lift its ban on the organization, which plays a vital role in delivering desperately needed aid to the besieged people of Gaza. In November, Israel's parliament passed 2 controversial bills. One banning UNRWA from operating in Israeli territory, and another mandating the closure of its premises in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as well as in war-torn Gaza. And from Gaza, we now move on to the latest developments in Syria. Syrian Foreign Minister Asad al-Shabani has stated that the new Syria is moving towards building positive and balanced relations with its Arab, regional and international surroundings. In a press conference following his meeting with Qatari Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani in the Qatari capital, Doha, al-Shabani explained that the new Syria will maintain good relations with the region, characterized by peace and mutual cooperation, distancing itself from the nature of the previous regime's relations with the region. Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs Badr Abdulati and his French counterpart Jean-Noël Barrot have discussed efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza, as well as developments in Syria. Minister Abdulati reaffirmed Egypt's support for the Syrian people, emphasizing the need for an inclusive political transition in Syria to preserve the stability and unity of the Syrian state. Turkish Minister of Trade Ömer Bolat has announced that around 40,000 Syrians have returned to their country from Turkey since the start of the voluntary return process. The Turkish minister also stated that the number of Syrians returning to their homeland since December 8th has reached 40,000 individuals who crossed through the border gates between the two countries. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani has stated that his government successfully shielded Iraq from the fiery belt threatening the region due to Israeli actions in Gaza and Lebanon. Al-Sudani emphasized that developments in Syria have a significant impact on the region's future and held major powers, along with the international community, responsible for the ongoing crisis in Gaza. And now on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Israeli media outlets have reported that the Israeli army will fully withdraw from the village of Naqoura in southern Lebanon and transfer responsibility to the Lebanese army. The report stated that international forces will assume responsibility for overseeing the Naqoura crossing, a strategic point, while ensuring the full deployment and control of the Lebanese army in the area. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has threatened to cancel the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon if Hezbollah does not withdraw from southern Lebanon. During a visit to an Israeli military base to attend an exhibition of weapons seized during the war, the Israeli Defense Minister claimed that Israel is committed to implementing the agreement in Lebanon. He stated that Israel would take measures to ensure the safe return of residents to northern settlements, but only if Hezbollah completely withdraws to the area south of the Litani River. The Lebanese National News Agency has announced a new Israeli incursion in the town of Ayatarun and on the outskirts of the city of Tibeh in southern Lebanon. The agency reported that an Israeli force advanced into the Ziqaq area on the outskirts of Ayatarun, where they carried out land and road bulldozing. Additionally, Israeli helicopters flew over the heights of the Sheba farms in southern Lebanon. UNIFIL has issued a statement accusing the Israeli military of deliberately damaging facilities belonging to both UNIFIL and the Lebanese army in southern Lebanon. In its statement, UNIFIL noted that an Israeli bulldozer was observed destroying a blue barrel marking the ceasefire line between Lebanon and Israel in the Laboune area, as well as a Lebanese army observation tower near UNIFIL positions. The statement emphasized that the Israeli military deliberately and directly destroyed both UNIFIL property and Lebanese army infrastructure. Egypt's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Migration, Badr Abdulati, and his Lebanese counterpart, Abdullah Abu Habib, have discussed the latest developments in Lebanon in light of the upcoming session of the Lebanese parliament to elect a new president. Egypt's Minister Abdulati stressed on the need for intensive efforts to achieve a Lebanese-led consensus to end Lebanon's presidency vacancy, free from foreign interference. The ministers also discussed Syria's political and security situation, emphasizing support for the Syrian people's will, state unity, and a Syrian-led political transition without foreign influence. The head of the International Committee of the Red Cross has emphasized that the ceasefire in Lebanon must be upheld, urging the continued flow of humanitarian aid to support civilians in the country. She stressed that Lebanese civilians cannot bear the consequences of a collapse in the ceasefire, which could lead to more death and destruction after the expiration of the 60-day deadline. Moving on to the U.S., where the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in South Korea, coinciding with ongoing events in the country. Earlier, the U.S. State Department announced that Secretary Blinken will visit South Korea, Japan, and France from January 4th to the 9th amid a political crisis in Seoul. Jimmy Carter's state funeral has begun in Georgia, his home state. His motorcade arrived at Georgia's state capital, where dignitaries welcomed his son Jack and grandson Jason. The casket was then taken to the Carter Presidential Library, received by a military honor guard. Family members, including his son Chip and grandson Jason, spoke warmly about Carter's legacy. Following Tuesday's service in Washington, Carter will be privately buried in Plains, Georgia. And moving from the US to the UK, Manchester Airport has temporarily closed its runways due to heavy snowfall, but reopened after snowplows cleared the tarmac. The airport announced that runways were reopened several hours later after snowplows worked to clear the tarmac, but delays to departures and arrivals were still expected. Amber weather warnings for snow and ice remain in effect across parts of England and Wales, with up to 30 to 40 centimetres of snow expected in northern England. And now we move to the latest developments of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia's aviation authority, Rosavatsia, has announced the temporary suspension of flights at airports in 3 cities located east of Moscow. Suspension took place from 7:15 GMT to ensure civilian aircraft safety. With no specific reason was given, previous closures occurred due to potential threats from Ukrainian drone strikes. Ukraine's Air Force has reported shooting down 61 of 103 drones launched by Russia overnight. Ukraine's Air Force noted that 42 other drones were lost, likely due to Ukraine's electronic jamming techniques to misdirect or disrupt Russian drones. No reports of significant damage or casualties have emerged yet. Russia reported intercepting 8 US-made missiles and downing dozens of drones. Russian Ministry of Defense reported that its forces had captured a settlement in the Luhansk region, while its air defense systems intercepted 8 US-made missiles and downed 72 drones. Russian rescue workers have cleared more than 86,000 metric tons of contaminated sand and earth on either side of the Kerch Strait following an oil spill in the Black Sea last month. The oil leaked from 2 aging tankers that were hit by a storm on December 15th. One sank and the other ran aground. More than 10,000 people have been working to shovel up viscous, foul-smelling fuel oil from sandy beaches in and around Anapa, a popular summer resort. The Ukrainian Air Force has said its air defenses downed 34 out of 81 drones launched by Russia overnight. It added that 47 drones were lost, referring to Ukraine's use of electronic warfare to redirect Russian drones. Russia's Federal Security Service has announced it had thwarted a large attack in the city of Yekaterinburg and detained 4 teenagers who were allegedly planning to detonate a bomb in a crowded area. Russia's Federal Security Service added that it had seized components for a homemade explosive device and that investigators in the Sverdlovsk region had opened a criminal case. These are all the news we have for now, but here's a reminder of the stories we've been covering. Gaza's health ministry reports critical shortages of medicines, including depleted cancer treatments. The Syrian foreign minister asserts commitment to balance cooperative, regional and international relations for peace. And Israel withdraws from Naqoura, transferring control to the Lebanese army, overseen internationally. And by this, we come to the end of our news bulletin for this hour. But please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.